COVID-19, or in other words, the coronavirus disease 2019. I'm sure you've heard the phrase over and over by now, but have you ever wondered about the vaccines we've made to combat the disease? When you hear the words COVID-19 vaccine, remember that it can work in one of three main ways. The first is the more common vaccine that works like the vaccines we've seen before, the conventional inactivated vaccine. So like the vaccines for polio and rabies, they use a virus that is completely inactivated. They're immersed in a sort of chemical that disables it and prevents it from multiplying in your body. But their structure, particularly the spike proteins on their surface, remains intact. This is important since, as you'll see soon, the antibodies that fight against this virus bind to these spikes. Blocking the spike protein is key in the fight against this tiny virus. The next vaccine type is more commonly distributed in the US right now. Meet the RNA vaccines. They're pretty groundbreaking technology. These types are seen in those produced by Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna, and they've been recently given FDA emergency use authorization. Let's take a closer look at how exactly they work. And what's in this power juice, you might ask? Like the name suggests, it's a piece of virus mRNA inside tiny fat nanoparticles. mRNA is genetic material that animals like humans have too. It pretty much acts like a blueprint for a protein. This piece of mRNA codes for the COVID-19 spike protein in particular. When you get your vaccine, it gets injected into your upper arm. The nanoparticles containing the mRNA enter our host cells, which synthesize the spike protein using our fantastic mini protein makers, aka the ribosomes. Now, the cell perceives this to be a foreign antigen and so it decides to place it on the MHC protein on the outside. MHC stands for Major Histocompatibility Complex, whose role is indeed to expose foreign antigens to the surface of the cell. This is sort of like tweeting about the event and letting the whole of the rest of the body know, hey, I've got this weird-looking spike protein. Remember it so that the next time we see it, we can take it down. Our immune system's white blood cells detect the funny-looking spike protein and make antibodies specific to the protein, kinda like tiny ninja stars. They help bind to and inactivate the coronavirus if it ever encounters it in the future. Remember, none of the genetic material actually even touches our own. Our body's cells just have machinery outside the nucleus that's able to read and translate the information that's injected within us. The RNA itself has a really short lifespan too, and degrades as soon as it gets translated into the spike protein. And these power shots are about 95% effective. If you take a vaccine in the US now, it's likely that you'll get an RNA vaccine. And finally, we've got the viral vector vaccine that carries a piece of the virus's DNA that codes for, you probably guessed it by now, its spike protein. It'll need to convert the DNA into mRNA, and then like the vaccines we saw before, the body creates antibodies against the proteins that were made from the mRNA. These antibodies are remembered just in case the body needs to fight against the COVID-19 virus it sees in the future. So here's a quick recap of the three vaccines. There's the injection of the weak inactivated virus, the mRNA of the virus's spike protein, and a viral vector that stores DNA of the virus's spike protein. All of these work towards triggering the immune system to fight against the virus's material, and know how to fight it in case it encounters it later on. And in terms of side effects, they all appear to be mild symptoms. Soreness in the arm you got vaccinated, a headache, or slight fever. These adverse symptoms are not long-term, and most of them only appear within the first 2 months after the dose. Remember, you won't get COVID-19 from the vaccine since the RNA injected doesn't have all the information needed to make the virus. It only codes for one part, the spike protein. These vaccines take a couple of weeks to produce an immune response, and you may need to take another dose or a booster shot soon afterwards. With this, I hope you learned a little more about how these vaccines work. We've got some resources you can check out if you'd like to learn some more. So be brave, get vaccinated, and armored with the knowledge of COVID-19 vaccines.